Hi, good morning everyone, and lovely to see all of you here today. My name is Kheng and I am the Regional Head of Shipping Finance at Standard Chartered. And I have the opportunity to interview an esteemed friend and guest. Rasmus, good morning. Thank you very much for your time and insights today. To set the context, Rasmus, you have worn many hats in your career in shipping. As someone who has done chartering, buying, selling ships, now sitting right in the center of one of the largest cargo owners in the world, managing the logistics. You have taken on what I consider the most ambitious challenge that you have in your maritime industry as you look to unlock decarbonization, right? In your role as the head of fuel decarbonization at Trafigura, can I kick off by asking, can you share with us your mandate on this? And how has your journey been since taking on this role in the last 2 years?
Okay, well, first of all, thanks for inviting me today. I've been looking forward to sit here. So what is the mandate for me? Trafigura, probably like many other companies, we're in the process defining our DNA. So as such, I don't have a specific mandate. The world is changing very fast. We have gone very deep into the transition. What am I doing as such? We have a big position on regulatory change. I think we'll come to that in this talk. We have investment in green fuel flows. We have investment in hydrogen projects. I participate in this together with our M&A team, our power renewables teams, and go on the boards of some of these investments that we provide.
Thank you. And moving on to my next question then, you've taken on this role in 2020. How have we progressed in your perspective since the conversation began from a fuel decarbonization perspective?
Okay, I think we are surprised also positively in terms of the opportunities that the space is providing. In terms of the depth and investment opportunities, there's a lot to do. We are deeply engaged on the ammonia side, investing into green fuel flows and hydrogen, as said before. And sorry, in terms of progress, and going back to where we started from, where shipping decarbonization was not very much on the global radar 2 years ago. Last week at the Climate Week in New York, UMass and UN high-level climate champions publicized a report on shipping's progress for 2030 decarbonization, target 5% zero-emission fuels. There was a traffic light publicized in this report on 5 different metrics. If you go back 2 years, they would all have been red. This was on policy, it was on technology, it was on demand, it was on finance and society. Society is getting very green, technology is green, demand is not yet there, there's a challenge, we come to that, and then policy is the key red, where we're still standing. But on positive terms for the industry has actually moved quite far forward. Coming back from Climate Week and flying into here, leaving New York actually a little bit charged up, listening also to Deputy Director for US Climate Envoy to the President's office, stating that the coming COP, we're going to have a lot of focus from the US on green shipping, the shipping transition. Going back to what happened last year at COP, where there was a lot of focus as well, having leading EU Commission members actually also in New York last week, they said, well, the ministers, they didn't manage to feed the communication down to the IMO members. Having the US come in aggressively for the coming COP, I have actually quite a lot of hopes that we're going to see change, further change, stronger push from top level, i.e. the US, Secretary Kerry, which is going to feed into transition in the IMO.
Thanks, Rasmus. Yeah. Thanks for kicking off on a positive note, and I think this is also reflective of the level of conversation that we are seeing in the last couple of years in marine money. I think as a quick recap, we were asking ourselves, is decarbonization possible on a net zero front? And I think the conversation today is how do we get there and how quickly can we get there? Fast forwarding to today, right? We've heard on the previous panels on the cloudy skies that lay ahead us, both on the geopolitical front and the macroeconomic front. On the state of markets in panel, they were positive in the shipping market. I want to kind of get your take on those two panels. We have fantastic momentum leading today, but how do you foresee the conversation and the efforts in decarbonization, specifically for fuel side, taking forward in light of all these challenges that lay ahead?
Okay, as an industry, we are looking very much inside, focusing on what we do. The shipping industry, if we are to transition, first we have to figure out what are the fuels of the future. Many people, including ourselves, are assessing these as hydrogen derived, i.e. green methanol, green ammonia, potentially a blue of the two kinds, yeah, if you can sequester the carbon, which is probably technologically feasible. The challenge that we have as an industry, going for hydrogen-derived fuels, and Abhishek said it earlier, where they're going to come from. Right now we have a transition where we're competing with all the other hard-to-abate industries. This is the cement, the steel, the chemicals, the heavy road traffic, transportation, and then we have ourselves. Combine these hard-to-abate industries, we have 30% of global GHG. The challenge that we see we have as an industry right now, all these industries are waking up. So if we don't immediately manage to push our demand curve forward, we can be left hanging where other industries have matured the ability to pay for the hydrogen, which is yet to come and to be developed. So I see a big threat, actually. I see an opportunity as well. Because of these hard-to-abate industries, we have IMO. And some will say that's very bad, but you can also turn around and say that's actually very good, because we have one regulator. So we just need this one regulator to come around. And coming into what I said before and coming back from New York last week, actually in the room from a leading EU Commission member said, well, I feel in IMO we currently have 40 to 50 swing countries moving towards carbon-based carbon pricing within the IMO. So it's like all these small steps, and back to the traffic light where I started before, which is sort of very hard to put a two-dotted line on because we live in it and it's happening outside the rooms, it's happening outside the IMO forum or plenum. The fact is, there's a lot going on. And actually there's a real chance coming to this MEPC here in December that these 40 to 50 swing countries, they can come on board. And if we have the US commitment, which the Deputy Director of the US Climate Envoy gave us last week from the stage, well, actually there's a real chance. But again, as an industry, we have to be very realistic around that we need to come around faster than the other hard-to-abate sectors.
Thank you for that. I want to build on that point. You've been very vocal, as you just shared, in calling for an IMO-led initiative, a carbon tax, if you will. And you can kind of elaborate a little bit on that. I want to kind of drill deeper, right? Can you explain, what does it take for us to get there, right? IMO has been split when it comes to the pace of decarbonization. And I think the room understands the challenges faced by different countries, by different pace of developments in different particular subsectors. Can you share your take on that conversation today? And what does it take to convince members, like you pointed out, who are sitting on the fence?
Okay, we have certain South American countries which have yet realized the huge potential from the exports they can generate from wind. They need to come on board. These countries need to realize there's a benefit. Countering back, well, what's the cost of not acting? And of course, we're all starting to pay the cost of climate change. So I think all these countries, they need to get into that sentiment. But a lot of developed and less developed nations, they have a big benefit from being a possible hydrogen producer. Just going back to the other hard-to-abate industries, we are, as Trafigura, investing into a 1 gigawatt electrolyzer facility in Denmark, and I've been spending time with politicians, like we've been very busy on the shipping side. Now I'm busy on the Danish political side to get hydrogen pipelines. There's a trucking infrastructure that we like to put into Denmark, and we see the German steel industry actually coming to us saying, okay, we're ready, what can we do? We spent a year with the Danish politicians going to parliament members, and third time they came back, or what did we talk about last time? And it was a little bit frustrating, and then we have the war. And suddenly We have the Danish, the Dutch, the Belgium, the German prime ministers together with Ursula von der Leyen sitting, and they come out, listen, we're going to transition Europe, and then now it's about energy security. And there will be a ton of offshore wind coming and being tendered out in the coming 12 to 24 months. And that goes back to our challenge as an industry. If we're not ready to offtake this, we can be damn sure that the steel industry will be ready. And this is one of the challenges. Sorry, I diverted from IMO.
No, I think that's the point. I think wanted to kind of challenge you on that point, right? You say that the shipping industry has been focused looking at each other to decide on fuels, whilst there are other industries out there waiting with demand there for green fuels, right? But wouldn't the hypothesis be true that if there is demand for those green fuels, wouldn't that accelerate the pace of development, bringing down the kind of economies of scale, bringing down the cost? How do I reconcile that?
Yes, there's definitely a technology benefit for all hard-to-abate industries. The electrolyzer capacity is constrained. What is happening now on large-scale electrolyzer facilities around the world, and there's so many who want to build this, including ourselves, well, we won't have access to the full technology capacity. So there will be a technology improvement, cost will come down. So the shipping industry will be also a beneficiary of this technology improvement, and it's not unimportant. The biggest cost when producing hydrogen, the biggest OPEX is your electricity cost. And obviously right now we have an energy crisis, and it goes back to what I said before, that we will have a lot more green electricity coming out. What is the challenge for the green fuels? And also coming back from New York, everybody at the Global Maritime Forum saying we need the green fuels. But the problem is we cannot get them produced at scale. And why can we not get them produced at scale? I give an example. So together with Renewable Investment Infrastructure Fund in Denmark, we're investing 20 million euros in FEED study in Norway. So we're spending 20 million euros without knowing if there is a market. In 12 months, in 6 to 12 months, Trafigura will have to decide, can we offtake a stream of green ammonia for 10 years? Because that's what Abhishek will need in order to be able to finance it. We know that. That's also what CIP investors, Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, our renewable investment partner, in order for their equity to be employed into this, they would need to have the offtake. Today, if here on the States, we are not capable of lifting that offtake because it's simply too big of a risk. And here comes risk, and how to quantify risk and how to deal with that risk. 2 weeks ago, we had a very friendly advice from our renewable investment partner. You should look at the other industries, because they are slowly getting more mature than your industry to be able to offtake. So we're doing that. But would I be extremely personally disappointed to see our own green ammonia production go to another industry than shipping? The absolute is absolutely yes. But it goes back to IMO. We need to have this demand driver unlocked, and the only way we can get that is through a cost neutralization of the zero emission fuels. And that goes back to the IMO, and that is the ultimate task. And when that gets fixed and solved, then you have a total domino effect that's going to ripple down to the full infrastructure. We have another challenge, we haven't talked about it, is the bunkering infrastructure, which we need. There's a lot of investment that needs to go into that. We also look at tanks, but when you look at tanks, you need to turn them around, you need to have a certain amount of flow going through these tanks. Well, we can only have that if it's produced at large scale. It goes back to the IMO. So we need this domino to be unlocked. So the key sits in London at the IMO building. So what can people do? I think that's also a question we should be asking ourselves. Well, we can go out to a flag state, we can push them, because again, if we don't do it, chances are we will lose as an industry. We can go to our IMO nations, whether it's here in Singapore, and Singapore's proactive, so I'm very positive. We have other leading nations which are proactive also in the IMO. But people sitting in here, go back to your home country. What is your position? What is our position as a country? Because we need each country to come in at the next IMO meeting to go in and be part of and participate at these as these 40 to 50 swing countries to come on board for carbon pricing. When we have that, and this is the positive, then we can win as an industry. But without it, we will be left hanging dry, unfortunately.
Building on that point of carbon tax, right? There has been a huge debate on that level of taxes. You have seen regulatory-led initiatives in the West. I think in Asia, there is very much a private sector push to do better. where's your sense of where that carbon tax would be, and how do you reconcile that difference between the various markets between East and West from a carbon tax perspective? Because there is a different pace of transition that different geographies are facing.
We have the challenge as an industry if we get regional measures. That's a problem because one region may not give the opportunity for other regions to come in, or they will start competing and it will become an administrative nightmare to deal with. So regional measures as such, we don't see as a positive. So we can only hope that IMO beats the EU. What we see and what is actually positive, EU MEPs and Commission members are also present when Global Maritime Forum meets in New York. And they're actually pushing the industry towards pushing IMO. So what we hear from the EU, and I've been a couple of times at roundtable events in the last 12 months, is that actually the EU wants a regulation, they want decarbonization. So EU is not out there for egoistic reasons. It's actually there to push the IMO. But the thing is, if IMO does not act, EU will act. And then we get a regional measure. And then we don't know what the counter reply will be from the US, from China, from regions here in Asia. But chances are it will not be positive for shipping's ability to decarbonize.
Thanks very much. I think there's been a lot of conversation on the initiatives that are happening in the West. I think taking it back to where we are today in Singapore, and in a audience of financiers, bankers, operators, what is your key message, from an Asian perspective, to the initiatives that you're looking to drive?
In terms of regulation or generally speaking?
Generally.
I have to start with regulation because this is where the solve lies. Go in, push your vote, try and not push your own, but push your neighboring country, because that's the only way we can get things done. So for me, it's just the simple message. We need countries to push IMO, and that's also in Asia. Having said that, we have seen the Marshall Islands, small island states come in with a market-based measure proposal in the IMO. We have seen Japan coming with market-based measure proposals. So it's actually the Asian countries which have taken the lead on this. We expect other countries to come again here in December. So Asia is participating also in the IMO. Going into ship owners, so now we go away from regulators. In terms of emission reporting and transparency standards, a topic I would like just maybe to touch a little bit on. Global Maritime Forum, through the Global Maritime Forum, we have had the financing bank launching the Poseidon principles. I believe there's now 30 signatories. We've had the insurance principles launched by Patricia Kern, she is heading that up. And then we have the Sea Cargo Charter, which is the owners and operators and charterers emission reporting transparency system. SCC Sea Cargo Charter was launched 18 months ago. There's now 34 signatures. Only 20% are coming from Asia. It's not a dangerous thing to engage in. It's volunteering to report your emissions. Why do we do this? Because we need standards. So we all can compare apples and apples in terms of who is emitting what. It's not a ranking. It will not be a ranking, at least for a large number of years, because it's all about gaining the data so we have an better assessment of where emissions are lying. And we need to get the base right. So the Sea Cargo Charter I can only market heavily also in this room and to Asian owners and operators. You're more than welcome, and it's absolutely not dangerous. And it will help the whole industry for transparency measures.
Thanks, Rasmus. I think we have time for one last question, but before we get into that, you have many good points. I want to kind of summarize in our conversation today. I think the silver bullet, as you put it, is a IMO-led initiative. To get there, we need we need common standards across the globe. We need conversations that are happening both East and West. We are all looking towards 2050, and I think the panelists that sat before us wanted to look closer. So one last question as we leave this, what would you want to see achieved in the next 12 months if we were to speak again? I
want to see action in IMO. That is ultimate important aspect. I think there's a real chance it can come. If we get that, I think we're off on a very optimistic trajectory as an industry ahead of the other hard to abate sectors.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.